There are souls in this world who carry an unusual weight, not because they are flawed, but because they were born for something more. From the earliest moments, these individuals feel a dissonance between their inner depth and their outer world, especially within their families. While others inherit warmth and affirmation, they inherit chaos cloaked as home. But this pain is not punishment. It is a sacred initiation. Carl Jung, the pioneer of analytical psychology, believed that individuation, the journey to one's truest self, rarely begins in comfort. It begins where the soul is fractured. For the ones meant to awaken first, life does not offer gentle beginnings. It offers contrast. And it is in this contrast between what is and what should have been that they begin to remember who they really are. You were not born into a toxic family by accident. You were planted in that soil precisely because your soul had the strength to grow through concrete. Every rejection, manipulation, or invalidation wasn't the universe cursing you. It was shaping you. Because when safety is not handed to you, you learn how to build it from within. And that inner fortress becomes your greatest power. 1. The calling of the soul. From the moment we are born, our souls begin a journey, one that is not always smooth or comfortable, but one that leads us closer to our true selves. For many of us, this journey begins in the heart of chaos, within the confines of families that are anything but nurturing. Rather than being raised in a place of safety and unconditional love, we find ourselves in environments that are toxic, manipulative, or emotionally neglectful. But why? Why do those with the potential for the deepest spiritual awakening often find themselves in the most challenging situations? This isn't an accident. It is in fact part of a greater cosmic design. The soul chooses its path before it incarnates, and often the most spiritually advanced souls are those who are meant to confront darkness, to face emotional battles that others may never encounter. They are born into families that seem broken or disjointed, not to become broken, but to heal, to transform, and to bring about change, not just within themselves, but within the world. Carl Jung, in his profound understanding of the human psyche, recognized that the soul's journey toward individuation, a process of self-discovery and self-actualization, begins not in a perfect, harmonious environment, but often in one fraught with dysfunction. Jung's teachings suggest that the individual must face their own shadow, the unconscious parts of themselves that have been repressed, rejected, or ignored, in order to integrate their whole being. This confrontation with the shadow often takes place within a family unit, where the trauma of the past and the wounds of previous generations create an environment ripe for emotional and spiritual awakening. The chaotic family dynamic, with its manipulation, control, rejection, and neglect, becomes the crucible in which the soul is forged. While others may try to escape from the pressure of this dysfunction, the spiritually awakened ones learn to stand tall within it. They are forced to look beyond their family for love, understanding, and support. And what they find is not just a different version of human love, but something more profound, a connection to the divine, to their higher self, to the universe. It is in the midst of this struggle that their spiritual strength is nurtured. 2. The shadow and the light. One of the most pivotal aspects of Carl Jung's teachings is the concept of the shadow, the unconscious part of ourselves that we either suppress or deny. For many people, the shadow is not something that is consciously acknowledged, but rather something that operates in the background, subtly influencing our behaviors, thoughts, and decisions. In toxic family environments, the shadow is often projected onto others, and the most sensitive, intuitive individuals are the ones who feel its effects the most. Growing up in a toxic family system means facing rejection, gaslighting, and emotional abuse. Yet, Jung taught that in order to become whole, we must confront our own shadows, those parts of ourselves that have been hidden, shamed, or neglected. The shadow isn't inherently evil. It is simply the parts of us that we have abandoned or been taught to repress. And in the process of individuation, we must come to terms with the parts of ourselves that we would rather not face. For those who were born into families steeped in dysfunction, their shadow often takes the form of emotional scars, wounds that run deep and affect every aspect of their lives. The emotional abuse, neglect, or manipulation that they experience at home shapes their understanding of themselves and the world around them. Yet, it is precisely through this suffering that their spiritual strength begins to emerge. The emotional pain becomes the catalyst for our personal growth and spiritual awakening. What was once a source of confusion, shame, and isolation becomes the crucible in which they refine their inner strength. Rather than shying away from the darkness, those on the path of spiritual awakening learn to walk through it. They confront the lies they have been told, the beliefs they have internalized, and the wounds they have carried for so long. It is not an easy journey, but it is a necessary one, because in the process of facing shu-yu, or shadows, we are able to step into the light, not just as survivors, but as warriors who have faced the darkness and emerged stronger for it. 3. The gift of spiritual immunity. When a child grows up in a toxic family, they are often forced to develop coping mechanisms that protect them from emotional harm. These coping mechanisms are not always healthy, but they serve a purpose: to keep the child safe in an environment that feels unsafe. Over time, these mechanisms become second nature, and the child learns how to navigate a world that constantly threatens their sense of security. However, for those who are spiritually gifted, these same mechanisms can serve a higher purpose. Rather than simply surviving the chaos, they learn to transcend it. The emotional unpredictability, the manipulation, the control, it all pushes them inward, toward a place of spiritual refuge. They begin to seek solace not in external validation, but in a deeper, more profound connection to the divine. This spiritual immunity is not something that is given. It is something that is cultivated through the trials of life. It is born from the recognition that external circumstances do not dictate our worth, that the love we seek is not found in the approval of others, but in the connection to something far greater. The toxic family system, rather than destroying them, sharpens their sense of self, strengthens their ability to trust their inner voice, and empowers them to stand firm in their truth. In many ways, this spiritual immunity is the gift that arises from trauma. While others may crumble under the weight of their wounds, those with spiritual immunity learn to alchemize their pain into wisdom. They gain a deep understanding of the human condition, an ability to empathize with others, and a profound sense of inner peace that cannot be disturbed by the chaos around them. What others see as weakness, emotional sensitivity, intuition, and empathy becomes their greatest strength. It is this very immunity that allows them to rise above the dysfunction of their families and, ultimately, to brew free from the chains of generational trauma. The gift of spiritual immunity is not just the ability to survive. It is the ability to thrive in the face of adversity. It is the ability to hold on to your truth when the world around you tries to make you forget it. 4. The sacred role of the outsider. There is a moment in every spiritually awakened person's life when they begin to realize they have never truly fit in. Not in their families, not in schools, and often not even in friendships. It's not due to arrogance or rebellion. It's an intuitive discomfort with systems built on denial, with relationships rooted in performance, and with environments where truth is not welcome. This is the journey of the outsider, and while it often begins in it eventually reveals itself as sacred. To be the one who questions everything is not a flaw, it's a function. In toxic families, the outsider is often labeled the troublemaker, the difficult one, the problem child. But these labels are projections, defenses used by the family system to protect its dysfunction. The real offense of the outsider is that they refuse to participate in the illusion. They name what others silence, they feel what others suppress, and for that they are often punished. But here lies the paradox. The outsider is also the mirror. By simply existing as their authentic self, they reflect back to the system everything it doesn't want to see, its wounds, its denials, its emotional undercurrents. And mirrors make people uncomfortable. Jung spoke extensively about projection as a defense mechanism, the process by which individuals cast their disowned traits onto others. In dysfunctional families, the most awake member often becomes the PR, ejection screen for everyone's shadow. Being the black sheep, then, is not a mark of failure. It's evidence that you are seeing with clarity. You were never meant to adapt to the dysfunction. You were meant to disrupt it. Your refusal to abandon your voice, your emotional truth, your intuitive knowing is not rebellion. It is a return to self, a spiritual defiance against roles that never fit you. What begins as alienation becomes an invitation. Over time, the outsider comes to understand their true role, not to be understood, but to see clearly, not to conform, but to transform. You were born not to carry the system forward, but to end the cycle altogether. Your courage to live outside the script is what makes change possible, and though it may feel lonely, this path is the birthplace of visionaries. 5. Love without condition. Many who grow up in toxic families come to associate love with performance. You are loved when you are quiet. You are accepted when you suppress your needs. You are approved of when you become who they want you to be. This conditional form of love, while common, is deeply damaging. It teaches the soul to abandon itself in order to be accepted. And in this abandonment, something vital is lost. Yet, here too the spiritual path begins. For the sensitive Sue, the absence of true love doesn't leave them empty forever. It leaves them seeking. And that seeking becomes sacred. What begins as yearning eventually becomes connection. Because when love is not found where it should have been, the soul begins to look for it in deeper places. In nature, in silence, in spirit, in the divine. Carl Jung recognized this longing for integration, not just with the self, but with something greater. He saw the human need for meaning, for spiritual depth, as inseparable from the process of healing. And it is often through loss that this depth is found. The person who was never fully seen by their parents begins to be seen by something larger. They develop an internal sense of worth, not built on approval but on presence. This is the gift of divine love. It cannot be earned. It does not require masks. It does not punish truth. It exists outside the realm of family dynamics and cultural expectations. And once you touch it, even once, you begin to rebuild, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. Many survivors of emotional neglect report a strange, almost paradoxical outcome. They become the most loving, most empathic people in their circles, not because they were loved well, but because they learned to love despite being unloved. They understand what real love is by feeling its absence, and once they find it, even in the smallest glimpse, they vow never to give it conditionally. This is how the cycle ends. Not through confrontation, but through redefinition. You begin to love yourself in the way no one else did. You speak kindly to your inner child. You surround yourself with people who honor your energy. And slowly, the definition of love shifts from scarcity to abundance. 6. Boundaries as spiritual medicine. There is a profound misconception in many families that love means access. That if you love someone, you must allow them full entry into your mind, your heart, your time. But those who have walked the path of spiritual awakening know love is not measured by your willingness to self-sacrifice, but by your commitment to truth. And sometimes truth requires distance. Boundaries are not the enemy of connection. They are the foundation of it. Especially, LA for those who have been manipulated or emotionally violated. Boundaries are not just necessary, they are medicinal. They are the healing balm that teaches the nervous system that safety is possible. They are the spiritual scaffolding that allows the self to rebuild. In toxic families, boundaries are often perceived as betrayal. When you begin to say no to roles you never chose, caretaker, fixer, scapegoat, the system resists. It lashes out, it accuses. Not because you are wrong, but because you are disrupting the power dynamic. You are no longer playing your assigned part in the family play, and this, to a dysfunctional system, feels like rebellion. But in truth, it is liberation. Carl Jung spoke of individuation as the process of becoming whole and distinct, separate from the collective expectations placed upon us. Boundaries are an essential part of this process. They allow you to disentangle from enmeshment, to separate your worth from others' opinions, to define where you end and where someone else begins. And in doing so, you reclaim your sovereignty. This doesn't always mean cutting people off completely. Sometimes it means reducing contact, choosing what you share, learning to leave emotionally charged conversations without guilt. Sometimes it means walking away entirely. But every boundary is a declaration. I am no longer available for the version of me that only exists to keep others comfortable. This is not cruelty, it is clair. When you begin to operate from your own spiritual frequency, those who were sustained by your self-abandonment will protest. They will attempt to guilt, shame, or manipulate you back into the old dynamic. But hold steady, because the discomfort you feel in setting a boundary is nothing compared to the soul-deep ache of betraying yourself again. And in time, boundaries become more than protection. They become invitations. They show others how to meet you in truth. They signal that love can exist without control, that connection can flourish without compromise. They become the framework for your new life, a life built not on survival but on alignment. 7. The final awakening. At a certain point, healing is no longer about the past. It becomes about embodiment. After years of inner work, reflection, and pain, you begin to realize what once wounded you no longer defines you. This is the beginning of your final awakening, not a dramatic transformation, but a quiet claiming of your power. You stop trying to be understood. You stop explaining your worth. You no longer seek peace in places that once caused your suffering. The family dynamic that tried to mute your voice becomes background noise. You've outgrown it, not through hatred, but through clarity. Carl Jung described individuation as the path toward wholeness. That path is never linear, but eventually you stop circling the same wounds. You begin to live from your center rather than reacting from your pain. You recognize your intuition as truth. You no longer abandon yourself to keep the peace. This is not detachment, it's maturity. You no longer carry, say, shame that doesn't belong to you. The roles, caretaker, scapegoat, peacemaker, fall away. What remains is you without performance. What emerges is something rooted, real, sovereign. You start setting boundaries without guilt. You distance without resentment. You choose peace over chaos, not because you're avoiding life, but because you're finally choosing it on your terms. You were not born to be trapped in someone else's unresolved story. You were born to write your own, and now you are. This is what spiritual mastery looks like. Not perfection, but presence. Not loud victories, but inner stability. You hold space for others without losing yourself. You grieve without becoming bitter. You remember your pain, but it no longer dictates your future. You are no longer surviving. You are creating. From this point on, your life belongs to you. Spiritual awakening is not a grand epiphany under the stars. It is often a silent decision in a broken room to not abandon yourself. And if you have known betrayal where there should have been belonging, know this: it did not defeat you. It activated you. Your survival wasn't just about making it out, it was about uncovering the divine blueprint hidden in your scars. Jung spoke of the shadow as the doorway to integration, and for you that door opened in your own house. Every time you were told to dim your light, it made your fire burn brighter. Every time you were asked to shrink, you learned what it meant to take up spiritual space. Your journey may have started in dysfunction, but it is destined to end in embodiment. You are not broken. You are remembering, not just for yourself, but for all those who never could. This is your revolution, not loud but undeniable. And now, as you walk forward, light intact, voice unwavering, know this: your path is sacred, and you finally are free.